But do you think then that just the issue in general, if you regard it with creation and evolution, do you think that that the creation is the one that really gets outside of what you call orthodox science,
sure,
and that evolution, it's for the most part, it's what stays in place by the rules?
Yeah, and I think that's it. I don't think everybody has to play by the rules. Mm-hmm. I don't object to people not playing by the rules that I play by. But what I do object is that they're saying they're playing by the rules. Mm-hmm. That they're saying that they are that creation, and by this I mean not the radical problem of creation, it's the creation of species, saying that they are treating it as a purely scientific problem, because they're not. Now, they point out such things as, that's what they quote me in here, because you see, it's a perfectly obvious thing. You know, but you both prove. Despite the bright promise that paleontology provides a means of seeing evolution, this presents some nasty difficulties for evolution. The most notorious of which is the presence of gaps in the fossil record. Evolution requires an immediate finding of species. Paleontology does not provide. But what I've said there is the fossil record doesn't prove evolution. I'm prepared to say nothing proves evolution. Okay. That evolution is a scientific hypothesis. And they say, aha! Well, anybody who says evolution is a proven fact is an idiot and deserves to be criticized.
Well, one thing that you mentioned kind of sparked something in my head, that if you tried to approach it from the idea of the idea of creation is, for the most part, you can't approach it on the same method, the same level. If you stated it in such a way as to not, let's say, for example, not explain the absolute beginning.
Whether the evolution of species, as we understand it, is really an interesting philosophy. In other words, that may sound funny, but what I mean is this. Aristotle believes that species are immutable. Individual organisms come and go and live and die. Species are forever. Now,
is that a valid position by the rules that you said are science?
Sure.
So that would, if let's say
so
the creationist,
that's a valid scientific.
Okay. So
sure.
If the creationist said, if we want to debate you, we'll go by Aristotle's rules.
Oh, sure.
Sure. You would go along with that.
No problem about that at all. Now, there may be biologists who would believe me, but there's no question in my mind that when Aristotle says that species are immutable, he's playing by the same rules that Darwin is playing by, even Darwin says they're not.
All right.
In other words, that's a scientific disagreement.
All right.
And I don't mean to say, as an opinion, I don't mean to say that it can be studied, settled, simply by observing the fact. It can't. But it doesn't invoke some extra philosophical, extra scientific standard by which these can be judged. All right. Now, what I'm puzzled about, for a younger man, turn my attention to, is whether, when Aristotle says, whether Aristotle's saying species are immutable and Darwin saying species are mutable, I wonder if they're really talking about the same thing. I wonder if what they're saying is one denying the other. I think not. And I think the reason is simply that Aristotle and Darwin don't mean the same thing. That Aristotle is talking about something of deep metaphysical significance, and Darwin is talking about a trend of that. And I think it has to do with that simply a matter of great confusion in the 19th century. I think that a more philosophically educated person was, the more shocking the proposal that species are mutable might be, until they understood that Darwin really wasn't talking about species the way Aristotle. But that's kind of a side.
So you would have an openness to someone said that maybe, let's say, relating it to not just biology, but let's say certain types of stars seem to stay constant. They don't seem to develop from one to another. If a person held that position and tried to argue scientifically from that, you might find that somewhat acceptable, or at least open to it.
Sure. Look. What Aristotle says, for example, is very simple. He said, if Aristotle to a greater extent than almost anybody knew about, relied upon his observation. And what does he observe about species? He observes that individual members of a species do not persist, but kinds persist. All right? Now that's a pretty obvious fact about the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
The blue jays, the individual blue jays in my backyard come and go. But blue jays, the category, the species blue jays, remain forever. Well, in my experience.
Yeah.
I don't see different kinds coming and going. I see individuals. Okay? So there's no question then that there would be abundant empirical support for the view that species persist. Now, then, if there's abundant empirical support for the view that species persist, why do we suppose they don't persist? Or why do evolutionists? Because they have got a very elaborate abstract theory that compels us to suppose that species don't. In other words, our reason for thinking that species don't persist is not our observation that they don't persist. It's a theory that requires them not to persist. And there's a big difference. In other words, if you depend upon your observations, you're very likely to suppose that species persist. If you depend upon a theory that may in turn be supported by observations, maybe not. But whatever the observations that support evolutionary theory are, they're not the observations species turns into another. Okay? They're to the change of species. All right? So what we would argue about, and what we should be arguing, this is another thing, what we should be arguing about, if we're arguing about evolution, is not about observation, but about theory. And then turn to the question of the observation support. That's why the paleontological record is so irrelevant. The paleontological record, fossil record, supports evolutionary theory if you presuppose evolutionary theory. If you don't presuppose evolutionary theory, it doesn't support it. In other words, it's consistent with evolutionary theory, but it does not compel us to accept evolution. So it's irrelevant.
Well, so you could also just as easily view it from the idea that kinds are static. You could view it from that.
Or that there is a multiple sudden creation of kinds. The fossil record is consistent with, I don't know about an infinite number of theories in the world, but certainly an astronomical number of theories.